All right, welcome everyone to tonight's celebration of Safer Internet. The theme around the world today on Safer Internet Day is Together for a Better Internet. And tonight's session is organized by the Sunlight Alliance for Action. And our work really involves protecting women and girls, especially women and girls from online harms. And I'll tell you in a while what the Sunlight Alliance for Action is. But first, I want to just show you, we have a wonderful panel tonight, and I will introduce them in a moment as well. Okay, this session is organized by the Sunlight Alliance for Action. And this alliance was formed in July last year after a series of conversation that involved 300 over people of different backgrounds. Maybe some of you here tonight would have participated in one or more of the conversation when we had a year-long celebration of women. And we came together to figure out how we can tackle online harms together, especially those that are targeted at women and girls. So our Alliance for Action's work is split into different areas, public education, and that is tonight's effort as well. We also have a team that looks into victim support, looking at engaging youth, also doing research, as well as rallying more volunteers. The Alliance for Action comprises a range of different people from the public sector, from the people sector, the social agencies, communities, as well as the tech companies. Okay, so we come from different backgrounds. All of us are volunteer, including all the panelists coming tonight. We are all volunteering our time. And you also are here spending 1.5 hours tonight together figuring out how we can create a better internet together. So once again, I thank you so much for making time tonight. As I mentioned earlier, the session is organized by Sunlight Alliance for Action in support of Digital for Life, and that is our national movement towards propagating the use of digitalization of various things so that our lives can be more efficient, more meaningful, more joyful. And tonight's session is done in partnership with a few community partners. Jhee Families is a ground-up movement for parents by parents. So many of you might have received the invitation from Jhee Families or the parent support group in your school. The session tonight is also supported by Center for Fathering, that's in charge of Moms for Life and Dads for Life. And the conversation tonight is going to talk about, how do we talk to our children about the use of the internet, how to stay safe, and the role of fathers and mothers are so important in this. So we want to thank all the partners coming together, and that's really the spirit of the Alliance for Action, that all of us can do our part. We can put our resources, our networks, whatever that we have, our experiences, put it on the table and see how we can benefit a wider community and benefit our nation. So let me now introduce you the wonderful panel that we are going to meet tonight. So let me first introduce Associate Professor Daniel Fung. Dr. Daniel Fung is the CEO of the Institute of Mental Health in Singapore. He is an adjunct associate professor at all our 3 Singapore medical schools. Dr. Fung is the president of the International Association for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Allied Profession, and president of the College of Psychiatrists, as well as the Academy of Medicine Singapore. Dr. Fung has co-authored over 200 peer-reviewed research papers, books, and book chapters as well. Can we all go to your reaction button, show him some love, clap your hands, virtual hands, and welcome Dr. Fung. Thank you so much, Dr. Fung, for spending time with us tonight. Next up, may I introduce... Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Fung. Do you want to say
I'm just saying hello.
Okay, hello. Yes, very good. Yes, please feel free to say hello. The rest cannot say hello to you, but they would show their reaction buttons to show their appreciation. So next up, let me introduce Ms. Joanne Wong. Ms. Wong is the head of Touch Cyber Wellness, which is a service of Touch Integrated Family Group. She has conducted workshops for children, teenagers, educators, social work professionals, counselors, and as well as seniors. Joanne also oversees the work that focuses on customizing and conducting prevention and intervention programs for cyber addiction issues. Let's welcome Joanne. Okay, pick your reaction button, wave your virtual hand.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. I love your background. Party time. Yes. Thank you so much. Next up, let me introduce Associate Professor Jhee. Dr. Jiow is an Associate Professor and Program Leader at Singapore Institute of Technology, where he has lectured and trained over 40,000 students, parents, government officials, and leaders on new media topics, both locally and internationally. His research dives into the impact of media on the family, cyber wellness, and cybercrime. And he has presented academic papers on cybercrime, parental mediation, and video gaming. His views and inputs on media literacy and cybercrime issues have been widely published in Singapore's mainstream media. Dr. Jiow currently serves as a member of the Media Literacy Council, as well as the Films Consultative Panel. He does a lot of work, so let's show him some love. Okay.
Thank you so much, Carol. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And may I introduce Ms. Clara Koh. Ms. Koh is the Head of Public Policy for Singapore and ASEAN at Meta, which is formerly known as Facebook. She leads the engagement with government and other stakeholders around policy issues relating to technology, the economy, and society. Clara began her career with the Singapore Foreign Service, where she spent over 6 years helping to manage Singapore's relations with Indonesia, Thailand, and the United States. In that time, Clara served as the first secretary at Singapore's embassy in Washington, D.C. So tonight we get an international perspective as well. So let's welcome Clara. Show her some love. Yeah, thank you so much, Clara, for spending time with us. Thank you. All right, so now that we have gotten to know our panelists, this is the tool that I mentioned earlier that we're going to stay engaged with one another. So if you have another device, you can scan the QR code and you would be brought to Slido. That's where you can key in your question, your comments. And in a moment, I'm going to run 2 questions to kind of like get to know each other in the room. Okay, but if you don't have another device, that's fine. Go to another tab on your browser. You will still be able to hear us, right? Go to slido.com and then the event code is sunlight. Okay, all right. So let's go to the first question. So, you are here. Are you a parent? Are you a young person? Are you a caring adult? Okay, so for those who have just joined us, welcome. You see on the top left corner the QR code. That's where you can scan it with another device and it will be brought to this poll that, that is moving. The number on the top right corner shows the number of people that are responding to this quick poll. So to get to know who else is in the room with us tonight. Okay, so majority of us are parents and educators. So good to have both parents and educators in the same virtual room. Sometimes the parents talk among ourselves, sometimes educators talk among themselves. Seldom do we have a space where all of us can come together and putting the children in the heart of our conversation. So tonight is an opportunity for us to do that, regardless of what we are, whether a parent or educator. Let's figure out tonight, right? How can we all create a better internet for our children and the next generation? So there are 67 who have responded. There are 150 in the room right now. So I'll wait a little bit more. For those who have just joined us, you are looking at the poll that we are running to get to know each other in the room. All right, the QR code on the top left corner is for you to scan it. And when you are there, you should be able to see the poll that's ongoing. Now go to the poll tab, right? That's where you can see what's happening now. If you don't have another device, not to worry, go to another tab on your browser, key in slido.com. When you are there, key in the event name Sunlight and you'll be brought to the poll. Is that okay? All right, for the 81 who have participated, thank you for your patience in waiting, you can actually go to the Q&A tab. That's where you can see some of the questions that have come in as part of the registration. So thank you so much for those of you who have keyed in your question as part of the registration form. We have put that into Slido as well. And Slido allows you to also to vote if there is a question that you also want to ask. So you can vote on it and I would bring as many of the questions to the panel later on. All right, so thank you so much. Majority are parents, and then we have got educators and young people as well. So good to have all of us in one space to discuss about this important area. All right, so the next question focuses more on the topic that we are discussing tonight. Okay, and so you are here. Are you here because you want to learn more about protecting, or have you gone through some experience? This is an anonymous poll. Okay, so just be as honest, and you can actually answer more than one. Okay, if you're here for different reasons. Okay, and it's fine. Okay, so majority of us want to learn about how we can protect someone. That person could be our student, could be our children, or it could be our friends. Yeah, so the top two is learning about how to protect and how to support. Okay, but there are also some of us who know of someone who have experienced online abuse. And for the purpose of our conversation tonight, online abuse can include, receiving threatening messages. Okay, like if you don't do certain things, I'm going to do something to you. Okay, or it could be sexual harassment. It could be sharing inappropriate pictures or non-consensual sharing of private messages that are meant to be private, but they get shared, in Telegram chats or, other private WhatsApp chat. There are some who also know of someone who have experienced online abuse. Okay, yeah. All right, there are 78 who have responded, and there are 153 in the room. Okay, perhaps I will wait a while more. You can, if for those who have finished, you can go to the Q&A tab and take a look at some of the questions, and you can already start to ask questions. There are also 12% who have experienced online abuse. I'm just so sorry of what you have gone through. And really, our work as an Alliance for Action is to really want to do our very best, whether we are from the private sector, public sector, or the community. We all want to come together and figure out how we can reduce and ideally, right, zero cases of online abuse at all. So sorry that you have gone through the experience that you had. I hope that we can collectively, right, help one another so that there can be fewer and at best no such cases. So tonight's conversation is about what we can all do. What are some of the strategies? What are some of the resources that we can use to help the people around us? Okay. All right. So thank you so much, everyone. There are 158 of us right now. So feel free to take a look at the questions in the Q&A tab, and then we would start the conversation very quickly. Just give me a minute. Okay, yeah, so majority of us are here to learn how to support one another. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's get to the conversation proper. I'm going to stop sharing screen. And let me first invite Joanne. Okay, let me first pull up Joanne. If the team could help to spotlight Joanne, that would be great. So Joanne is from Touch Cyber Wellness. And so Joanne, is the team spotlight Joanne?
I can spotlight myself.
Yes, thank you so much. We were just joking before the session, Alliance for Action, we all do our own self, do a lot of things. Okay, yeah, so Joanne, so in your experience at Touch Cyber Wellness, what have you observed in terms of how our young people are interacting on the internet? So for example, have they been more exposed to inappropriate content, especially now with the pandemic where they are using the internet a lot more for socializing, gaming, and different things? And so how should parents or even educators, right, how do they feel about their children's exposure to digital platforms?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Actually, there's a few parts to it. Maybe I talk about the first one. What have we observed about the younger children or teenagers, about how they interact on the internet? Well, I'm quite in a good position whereby we go to schools a lot and we talk to a youth, primary school age, secondary school age, and we get to ask them questions in the class. Okay, so one of the theme that we often talk to them about would be really about cyberbullying. And I remember very clearly at one of the lesson, I showed them an article that was published in, I think, 2018 or early 2019, about how many young people, when they experience cyberbullying, many don't really share with their parents. You know, to me, it was very shocking. Means that they keep quiet, they don't talk to anyone about it. So, you know, I was like flashing the slides behind and, you know, expecting some reactions. And then the students, primary school and secondary school, just stare at me and they're like, yeah, no big deal. It was interesting to hear from them why. For them, they just find that, you know, sometimes they keep quiet, they don't really talk about it because number one, okay, this is precious info to me too. Okay, number one, they find that, oh, you know, when I explain about what happened to me online, specific to bullying, harassment, they find that they can't really find the words to explain, and somehow it's hard to bring in the perspective that my social world is the online world. If I'm being targeted, it's just very painful for me to continue. That's the first point. The second point is that they actually say this, that oh, isn't it normal? Yeah, I mean, you experience this every time you are playing games, every time you're online talking to people. It's normal. I mean, what's there to talk about? Okay, and one student actually say, yeah, I don't want to look weak in front of my friends. It's such a small thing, right? Why would I go and report? So I think that's something that we hear, me and my team of trainers, when we're on the ground. I would say that it's from our own observation. Yeah, but when we hear that, we were quite saddened lah. Yeah, because we do know that when quite a few of them, they admitted to us that, oh, you know, when they are bullied, when they're harassed, they feel very terrible. They don't know what to do about all these feelings, and it kind of stay inside them. Yeah, and it becomes stress that build up over time. So that may not be very healthy. Yeah, so that's one area that we see. Yeah, I think the other thing that we are quite concerned about when we talk to parents is that we see young children playing games, right? And not all their friends play the same games as them. So when they want to play a game, they want to start certain round, they do have to play with strangers, right? And so then the interaction with strangers is something that we're concerned about, because we know that on that platform, you have scammers, you have bullies, you have potential groomers sharing the same space. And some of the young children are very young. They may not know how to discern whether I can share more with this person asking me question. Okay, I was sitting beside my nephew, P4. Okay, I was very free that day. Watch him play Roblox. So he was very excited. He was just sharing with me, you know, hey, this is how you play Roblox. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then what was going on here? What's going on there? And then at one point, he just so excited. And then I see messages pouring in, some of it from his friend. And one of the messages just say, hey, do you want Robux? It's an in-game currency in Roblox. I can give you, also offer him an amount. Wow, my nephew was very excited, okay, and I was quite blur, asking him, hey, who is this? Why is he giving you money? Okay, and then the next message come in, but you have to give me your password, then I can transfer you. You know, and my nephew was like, wow, ready to reply him already. And that's when I stopped him, talked to him about it, have to process. So I'm thankful that it was a teachable moment. But for me, when I see this, I'm like, how many parents actually have the time to sit down, monitor, supervise, and address some of this? So that's our concern. Yeah. I talked too much already, right? Yeah. So how can parents come in to support, right? Actually, one advice that we do give educators or caregivers of youth would be this. Okay, try, okay, just an encouragement. Try and understand the kind of applications and platforms that they are using. Why? Okay, so for example, Carousel is a buy and sell platform, right? Wow, okay, very simple. You just go online, sell your things, and then do that transaction. But when we understand how this platform works, we understand that this is how people ask to meet up, and there's a chat function. We at least can have some conversation in advance, you know, just to prep them, just to prepare them. because when things happen, youths being youths, some of them, they are afraid to tell us, approach the adults. Some of them, they will not automatically report to you everything that happened to them. So we need to build up their defenses first. Have that conversation with them. Oh, by the way, you don't have iBanking, you have to meet them physically. So you know that you have to go somewhere public, right? So it's that kind of conversation, and they won't feel they are being confronted because they have not made the wrong decision yet, or they have not made the decision yet. I think that's my advice, to get to know the application that they use. Of course, there are so many that they are using. Okay, it's quite tiring, right? So once you are familiar with one application, wow, then the next new thing come up, and then you're like, cannot catch up. Okay, no worries, it's the same for me. I can never catch up with what the youths are using. So in class, what I do is that when I talk to them and I ask them, hey, what are some of the things you're using? And I don't recognize anything that they're saying, right? I just keep my cool, pretend I know, okay? Then after that, I go to one corner, go and Google it, just quickly get an idea of it, and then come back and talk to them again. At least I know enough. I know enough to nod my head and and I know enough to have the connection with them. And this is sometimes enough for me to have an influence over what I'm going to tell them next. Yeah, scolding them, nagging them doesn't help. Okay, I know I'm a youth still. Yeah, so just a general principle that I can give as of now. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's my time.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Yeah, we will circle back to you definitely in terms of, you mentioned a little bit about how the children feel stressed. They don't know how to respond to different situations. And I think we would circle back, especially later on as we speak to Dr. Fung. But for now, if I could ask Dr. Jiow to share a little bit about his research, because he does research on cybercrime, and also he's on the Media Literacy Council. Dr. Jiow, based on your research, what could be the impact on the young due to exposure to different types of harmful online content? And in terms of online content, I think for tonight's conversation, we want to focus more on things that are relating to, sexting, for example, and I believe Media Literacy Council have some guides on that as well. So what are, what are some of the impact on the young people on those content, and what would be some of the good practices that parents and educators should take note of as we tackle this issue about online harms, especially to women and girls? Dr. Jiow.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so maybe I'll just give a little bit of background just to paint a little context to the audience that's here. So I actually used to work in schools where I run cyber wellness programs, and I used to talk to parents prior to becoming an academic. And after I became an academic, I looked into parental mediation. That is, I study how parents manage their children's media habits and all that. And ever since then, for 6 years plus already, I've been doing research and also giving talks to parents in this area. Yeah. So when I was asked to look at, let's say, harmful online content, and partly due to my experience, partly due to my exposure, I kind of like categorize the harmful online content into a few categories. And some of these categories may have some overlaps, and later I'll explain to you. One is obviously violent content. I mean, if you talk about effects, decades of media violence research has shown that actually violent media content is one of the risk factors for aggressive tendencies, especially among the young. And obviously, if you get more immersive in a sense where you play violent video games, that factor is more pronounced in that sense. The other one that, and it's probably related more to what Carol was mentioning, the other kind of content would be either, some would term it as sexual content or pornography, as some of us may be aware. So what the research show is that exposure to pornography actually helps to sustain young people's adherence to sexist and unhealthy notions of sex and relationships. So these are one of the effects that's found in research. And as consumption intensifies, attitudes of that support sexual coercion and increase this consumer's likelihood of perpetuating the assault. So these are some of the effects of some of these harmful online content. So pornography is one, violence is one. This is probably, like I said, when I categorize this, these are from my experience working with the youth and some of the issues that parents have brought up previously. And research also claims that pornography is actually a poor, dangerous sex educator. So that's one area that I am also particularly concerned about. And I mean, I can draw from the Media Literacy Council website also for some of these tips that are there, but it also highlights what the main consequences of looking at pornography are. Distorts your view on sexuality, desensitizes you towards women, increases your risk of developing a negative body image. And later on, I'll also mention that because that's kind of like another category that I'm looking at. And it's also something that, like I said earlier, overlaps with some of these categories. Increases your risk of developing unhealthy romantic relationships. Sometimes in my interaction with youth, they will say, "Oh, when I go out with my girlfriend or what, I need to do this, and what is this, and that means being physically intimate and stuff like that, going to sexual practices and things like that." So when you kind of interact with them and ask, hey, how you get to know this kind of thing? Oh, on the internet lah, stuff like that. And also it says increases your risk of developing sexually compulsive behavior and potentially like addiction to pornography lah. So this is one of what I would term as a harmful online content also something within my experience. Obviously, the other one that's very big right now is misinformation. So we're looking at examples will include, propaganda created to influence public perceptions, falsely stating negative things about character of a person or entity. I think nowadays we read in newspapers, we are familiar with some of these things, especially with COVID-19 and vaccination and stuff like that. Manipulation of images or videos to create a false narrative, message that's fabricated and has no factual grounding, and stuff like that. So these are some examples or category of harmful online content. And the effects that it may cause baseless fear that is stirred in the public. We're talking about, and some of us may be familiar with previous incidences where resources are wasted as the authorities try and check, the validity of whether a building collapsed or something like that. And reputations are hurt when false allegations are made against people and stuff like that. And obviously associated with this category is innocents lose money to scams. And there's a potential to widen or deepen social divisions, etc. And then the last category, I would just lump it all under this term called risky behaviors because when you see content online, there are some that promotes drug use, excessive alcohol use, disordered eating, self-harm, violence to others. And like I said, some of these things overlap because I talk about violence, I talk about pornography, and some pornographic scenes will also include violence to some extent, dangerous pranks, unprotected sex with strangers, and things like that. So basically, these are termed as risky behaviors, or at least in my interaction with parents, some of them term these as risky behaviors that they actually warn their kids about when they go online. So, what are some good practices for parents and educators to take note of to tackle some of these harmful online content? I always advocate parents being very involved in their kids' journey. Now let me say that I know it's very difficult. I remember the first time when my daughter came home and said, Daddy, I need to do this project that needs me to search online for content. Okay, so my radar kicked up, and then immediately one of the first thing I did was I went to buy a huge monitor screen. Okay, I put it in the public place in the house, like the living room, and then I made that the public computer kind of surfing area. That gives me visibility, and sometimes, although I advocate speaking to the child, getting to journey with them, sometimes the kid may stumble into things that they didn't know it was problematic. So that's why I feel that, especially when you're dealing with younger children, you need to start by having some of these monitoring mechanisms in place. Now, obviously, some of you may be thinking about, apps, those kind of monitoring apps, restrictive apps that help you and things like that. When I give talks to parents, I tell them that this is helpful, especially when the kids are young. However, as they grow older, you should have slowly weaned them off some of these apps already, because you want them to be able to exercise control and discernment in this sort of matter. So in a nutshell, this is what I would say in terms of helping parents engage in some of these, engage their children on some of these harmful online content. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jhee. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think you pointed out specifically also on how pornography and the impact it has on children. And your sharing about putting a big monitor screen reminds me that I should at this point also share with all of us here that tonight's conversation will likely go even deeper on the discussion on sexuality. So in case you are blasting it on TV and then you have got young children next to you, just be aware we won't be showing anything explicit, but there will be discussion on sexuality. So in case you haven't really broached it, and so just be mindful. Perhaps you put on your earphone and perhaps go to a more private place if you have young children and if you are concerned. So just to share a little bit, because tonight's conversation is about how do we deal with this kind of content that Jhee has just shared. Thank you so much. And if I could now invite Dr. Daniel Fung to share your thoughts as CEO at Institute of Mental Health. What are your thoughts about the prevalence of what was shared earlier, what is called technology facilitated harassment issues? For example, sexting, online grooming, and pornography. What is the impact on youth mental well-being, which is so much discussed, but sometimes we don't really talk about what could be some of the major causes. So from your perspective, would you like to share with us, in particular, how can families support their children? Dr. Fung.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol. I'm just mindful of the time. Okay, I just have to look at when we started. Let me preface my conversation really, and I know you're trying to ask about, facilitated harassment with technology. How does it affect youth? But I think we need to understand first that children and adolescents are developing stages. This is not something that there is a answer that's static. It's a dynamic issue. And you've also said that if you have young children, be careful, we're going to discuss very sensitive issues. So I think the first step is to recognize that children are developing. And as they get older, and hopefully when they start young, do not expose them to a lot of these technologies. Screen time should be minimal. I have a grandson now who is about 1.5. His mom insists on not having screen time. So I think that's actually quite good. He actually surreptitiously still gets screen time because he watches the adults using their phones, for example. But it's much less than what you traditionally, expose a young person to. But as they grow older, they have to in school, and certainly in many of the tools of interaction and making relationships, like the smartphone. Then you start to bring in the idea of technology, but bearing in mind that the challenges of the youth are no different from any other young person, even 50 years or 100 years ago. They have to develop a role that they find meaningful to themselves. They need to deal with stress and cope with it so that they develop resilience. And they need to form relationships outside of the family relationship, to separate from their parents and to develop relationships with others of their peer, and to develop their own sort of identity. All of these are challenges that youths will face as they grow. And in this adolescent phase is where the technology becomes quite prevalent. And unfortunately, I suppose there is a risk that some of these technologies will impose, even as there are benefits. So what is the prevalence, for example? I looked at an OECD study done in 2018 that was published, and they looked at 3 time points at 2010, 2015, and 2017. And what they saw was that increase, things like pornography or exposure to inappropriate sexual material online jumped from 10% in 2010 to 30% in 2017. So you can see that this is a growing issue. And Singapore is right on the digital frontier. We are a digitalized world. Our youths are exposed very early on. So you will expect a lot of these technology facilitated issues, whether it's online grooming, sexting, pornography, to be on the rise and to rise rapidly because the technology is so prevalent and pervasive. So what should we do? Well, I think the first thing is to, it's been mentioned by the first 2 panelists, really how to protect. But remember that as you start to have children grow into teenagers, protection can be seen as overprotection, and sometimes because you are setting, you lock up the house, you got 10,000 locks on the house. If you forget to lock, the thief can still get in, or if the person in the house wants to get out, they'll just unlock all your locks. So your security or your protection needs to bear in mind the young needs to be prepared. So I put 3 P's here. The first is protect, but protection works for very young. As they get older, you need to prepare the young. How do you prepare them? You give them an understanding and an awareness of what it means to use technology, whether it's the internet or any other technology that becomes pervasive, and the applications that they use. And I suppose I draw from MOE's cyber wellness 3 pointers. I like to make it simple. So 3 R's for that: respect, both for self and for others; responsible and safe use, so that they understand how to use technology responsibly and not take risks; and then to use technology to engender good relationships, particularly what I said, the challenge of developing relationships other than the ones at home. So how do you do it well and safe? So respect, responsible and safe use, and relationships that are positive. That's preparing the young. Finally, I think it's also important to sort of introduce the concept of what is the perception that young people will have in terms of abusive situations. Are they aware and are they competent to deal with it? Whether it is in cyberbullying, whether it's in sexuality-related issues. And I get the sense that Carol's going to lead us into the sexuality pathway. We'll talk less now, but maybe more later. It is important to prepare the youth and sort of help them to understand what are the possible risks that occur in this digital world and the technology that they use, as well as what potential risks they can develop for themselves. I see a lot of young people, because they are curious, they go online, they apart from the risks of aggressive or even sexual material, they can get addicted, to some of those materials, and that's quite a risk in itself. So I guess my 3 P's is to protect, prepare, and perceive abuse, and for the young person to really respect himself and others, be responsible, and develop positive relationships. That's my little summary.
Thank you so much. Wow. In your few minutes, we already have 3 P's and 3 R's. Very easy for us to remember. Thank you so much, Daniel. if I could now invite Clara from Meta to share with us what are some of the policies and safety features that parents and children should be aware of when they are spending so much time online. Clara?
Thank you, Carol, for having me here. And hello, everybody. Thank you for spending your evening together with us. It's a Tuesday night, so really appreciate you taking the time. And we'll try our best to make it worth it. So to start to answer your question, I would first say that for Meta, formerly, Facebook, but we also own Instagram, which I know more young people are on these days. For us, creating a safe environment for our users is a priority. And I would start by saying that, 40,000 people that we hire focus on security and safety on the platform. And we've also invested a lot in developing, new technologies and tools to really help our users be safe on the platform. So since 2016, that's been $13 billion. But I think turning more to the topic today, I wanted to give everyone a high-level overview of how we as a company approach safety, and then end off with a number of things that could potentially be helpful for parents to keep in mind. So our approach to safety involves 4 pillars. The first involves designing, comprehensive policies that deal with what is allowed or not allowed on our platforms, and this is both Facebook and Instagram. These are policies that we consult with experts on. They're not static, they keep changing. And then we also invest in technology to ensure that we can proactively detect that type of content and remove it from the platform, or allow users to report it to us. The second pillar of this is really around investing in developing, safety features and tools. I will talk about some of them later. The goal here is to create opportunities for our users to take greater control over their experiences on our platform. The third is really developing resources, and this could be resources for parents. And so, for example, just last year, we launched the Instagram Parents Guide here in Singapore together with the Media Literacy Council. And at the end of this presentation, we'll be sharing those links with you that you can take a look at. And fourth is really partnering with experts who are on this panel, for example, and community organizations in Singapore who are at the front line, Joanne being a great partner of ours in Singapore, to support digital literacy efforts. And this includes education around online safety. So before I get to some concrete examples for parents, I wanted to just flag a few things. So Facebook and Instagram, in case you're not aware, they are designed for people who are 13 years of age and older. And it's important that we flag this because the app is really designed for people of that age group and above. Here, I would also note that for minors, which we define as people of the age of 13 to 16 or 18 in some countries, we've also designed their experience to be slightly different because we want to afford them better protections. So for example, when you sign up for an Instagram account, you declare your age as, let's say, 14 years old, you will automatically have your account set to private. Other things that we do that afford greater protections for minors is, we make sure that adults who exhibit suspicious behavior, either because other users have reported them, they won't be able to interact with people between the age of 13 or 16. For people who are younger than 13 years old, we do have an application called Messenger Kids. And this is an environment that has built-in parental controls and oversight. But beyond Messenger Kids, our apps are really designed for 13 and above. So I think bearing these in mind, the first thing I would just sort of flag for parents here to be aware of is to work with your children such that they are accurately declaring their age on the platform. This allows us to make sure that all the protections that we put in place, they can avail themselves towards. Second of all is to be aware of the security and privacy settings. on our apps. If you're familiar with, Facebook, if you go into your settings, you can find a privacy or security checkout tool that kind of walks you through that process. Easily on Instagram, you should be able to find very similar settings. And these are really important in terms of managing your child's digital footprint. How much of what they're posting and information about themselves are being exposed to the, either the big public or to have a more restricted audience. And of course, for minors, a more restricted audience is something that we recommend. And third, I know that a big concern of parents is screen time. And I just wanted to also flag a couple of features on Instagram. If you go into your child's sort of activity settings, you can actually see how much time you've been spending on the app over the past 1 week. You can also look at yours. And I just checked mine today before coming in here. And yes, it's embarrassingly high. But below the chart of the week, you can actually there's some settings that you can toggle. So you can tell yourself, okay, after X number of minutes, remind me to take a break, right? Or set a daily limit for myself. So these are just some nudges to kind of remind you, because sometimes, at the end of the day, you're kind of doom scrolling on your Instagram. These little prompts just reminds you like, hey, I've spent enough time on Instagram and it's time to, move on and do something else. And I think fourth, I mentioned the Instagram Parents Guide, and I highly encourage people to take a look at that. If you're not an Instagram user yourself, and I know that some people are not, it's a very comprehensive walkthrough of what the app is about. And it also then provides some advice around some of the safety, and privacy features in the app, and also some suggestions for how you can have conversations with your child, how to have, start those conversations about, your privacy settings, digital footprint in there as well. So that could be a useful starting point to engage with your child. So I will stop there, and then very happy to take questions to go into a little bit more depth of what I've discussed.
Thank you, Clara. It sounds like there's a lot of work that is being done by Meta to keep users safe. The top voted question in Slido, if I could refer that to Clara. I know that you do so much already. You mentioned, partnering with Joanne in Touch Cyber Wellness, and you are also in the Sunlight Alliance for Action. And I know that you are in different places doing different things. The question is, what more can tech companies do to protect and keep the online space safe for children and youth? It seems like there's so much more out there. So could you share with us what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this question is a good one, and I think you might not be satisfied with my answer. But I would I think that the key thing to note about online safety is that the journey will never be finished. I think it's a constant, work in progress. I think for us, when we design our policies and we design product level interventions, we do that with that fact in mind, that these things cannot be static. They have to continue to evolve because behaviors change on the platform. Different types of harm typologies emerge, and I think it's really important for us to recognize that and be able to adapt to those developments. So I think that ability to always be adaptive is quite important as a platform. I think the other point that I mentioned in my earlier remarks is, partnerships. We see trends happening on our platform, usage patterns on our platform, and we can adjust. But I think it's equally that important that we work with, experts in the community. A lot of our interventions are global in nature, so our policies, these product interventions, but we consult with safety experts from all over the world because we want to understand how the app is experienced in different cultural and national contexts. We want to make sure that whatever we build, will be able to meet the safety needs in those different places. So I think it's important that we partner with these experts all around the world, and also really partner with the frontline organizations like Touch, the great work that they do. they are working with young people and parents. They understand the pain points, and that's really important for us to know as well, so that we can do better.
Thanks so much, Clara. Really important work that you and the rest of the tech companies are continuing to do with all the challenges. The next question is about what are some strategies to overcome temptations to cause online harm to other people? Perhaps if I could ask Daniel the question, Dr. Fung. Just now you mentioned a little bit of young people, developmental stages. Sometimes they might be curious, and then with the power of technology, sometimes it's very tempting. They are just tempted to do different things. So what are some of your thoughts about how can we help young people, and sometimes even adults as well, to manage temptations online?
Well, I think sometimes we forget, and that young people are quite capable, especially when you reach adolescence. Adolescence is a transitory state between childhood and adulthood. And one of the things that is important in adolescence is that the young person actually has a mind of their own, which they are capable of thinking very much like an adult. The only thing they lack is life experience and perhaps some degree of naivety in terms of expecting, some people to be generally well-meaning. So I think that awareness is important to get them aware of the risks as much as their benefits. And then I suppose, training them to not only be aware, but to be competent and to be able to be literate in the use of, and I suppose that's what Media Literacy Council has been trying to do, right, through the schools, to help them to understand. And I think this is opportunity really, not just in school, but at home, to have that literacy. And one way the parents can do this is to do it with their young person. Understand what they use. Someone mentioned, can we block TikTok, for example? But what are the values? What are the good things about, social media? We were talking about risk and safety, but don't forget that there are benefits in social media that we will never get. And I think this is highlighted by Clara, the global perspective on things, and just as much as cyberbullying can be, it's like bullying except it's global, but the learning and the continuous learning and sharing is also global, and that globalness actually is very useful for creativity, for ideas, and also in developing what I consider online communities that support. So I think that those are important things that young people need to have: literacy and then some degree of competence in use, and adults as well. I think the caregiving adult, the parents, should get involved in this process. We have a lot of technophobes, or what I call digital refugees, amongst parents. They shy away, they're afraid. My father, about 30 years ago, retired from banking because it was digitalizing, but he was very supportive of me understanding the digital world. So can parents today, instead of running away, stay on line, use the technology and use it in concert with your experience and the young person's curiosity? You can develop a good way to navigate safely. So it's a bit like, you should also watch television with your child and do other things with your child so that you can understand the context.
I thought I just want to chip in here. I wanted to relate a particular experience that I had. So this particular boy, actually, someone I counseled, stumbled into pornography. And so when the parents found out, they came down really hard on him. And then the boy, when I spoke to the boy, he was saying that actually it's not me, actually, that computer I served, because there were some cookies and all that at that point in time, I accidentally stumbled into it. And because of that, I was caught and I wasn't given a chance to explain myself. And so then the boy said this, next time, if I stumble, I don't want to tell my parents anymore, and stuff like that. So I thought in that particular situation, the parents could have just hear more from the child and understand what the child was facing in terms of sometimes they stumble onto it. I've also another case where the child just went in out of curiosity. And also the same thing happened where the parents overreacted, came down hard on him, and his response was, hey, next time I don't want to share this with my parents anymore. I think if the parents were to have taken time and patience to interact with the child, I think they would have, it would have been a valuable experience for the child, where it was an opportunity where the parents could actually either impart their values and things like that. Because you kids these days, they are curious and they will stumble into some of these. And then also to look at, if I were to look at a question about overcoming temptations, right? I think one of the key things is, as we interact with the child, we actually understand his or her motivation for their his or her online behavior. And having that motivation, understanding that motivation, it helps channel the child into something maybe more healthy, more meaningful. And then we're not saying don't use the internet, but maybe use it in this way, and it can be a guided process. So I just thought I want to chip in the experiences I had on these matters.
Yeah, I would also like to jump in to share a little bit. I think regarding this question, it just reminded me of how we can't anticipate every issue and every traps or every risk that they may encounter. Yeah, and it just reminded me that sometimes when we teach them, how much can we, try to cover and shelter them. So I think that it's also important that when they are online, we try to build this area called consequential thinking. And how we try to do that is that we arm them with good questions to ask themselves. So we train them when they are confused or when they're not sure, okay, when they're in doubt, right? Give them a few questions to ask. Okay, so for example, I want to post this on social media. What are some good questions to ask? Number one, for example, am I being responsible? Okay, number two, how will this impact myself, my image, my friends, my schools, my family? Okay, the thing is that, our youth, right, they are very fast and very quick when they are engaging online. That button that they click is just, it's just quicker than their next thought. So we have to remind them that, hey, you don't have to click so fast, just slow down, just think a little bit, okay, before you share this. And as you think, just we train them to be so conditioned to asking, how will this impact myself, my friend, my school, my family, different layers. Yeah, and can this be misinterpreted? Will I be misunderstood? Yeah, so I feel that if we can keep on somehow reminding them of some of this question to ask themselves, so that when they are online, at least they have something to guide their thinking. Another thing that came to mind is this. Actually, peer influence is very powerful. Yeah. Which is something that the school is trying to do. Instead of letting the teachers just share and teach, they're asking and empowering the students to share some of these messages. I've ever saw this happen. There's this boy in the class who thinks that whatever that he's doing and the bullying that he's doing is okay. It's justifiable. So I heard the story. So what the teacher did was that she gathered a few of his closer friends. So before she met the boy, she just have a chat with them and asked them, what do you think about bullying? So when she understood that, the friends all really feel that bullying is not very good, she decided to do this. She did this thing called like a group discussion. And in the group discussion, she basically just asked them generally, what do you think about bullying? She let the boy go last. So basically let the boy hear what the friends say. And mostly all of them say that, yeah, it's not very good, it's hurtful. And when it comes for the boy's turn to share, he was like, yeah, I think, yeah, maybe it's not very good. And I find that it's one step towards helping him to understand that he needs to think about the impact of his action. and not just be so inward and think that I think it's fine. And this change in his mindset didn't just come from a teacher, it came from his friend. So, we actually try and encourage our students, surround yourself with positive peer influence. That one is very, very, very helpful. Yeah. Okay. So that's from me lah.
Thanks so much, Joanne. Appreciate that. Yeah, the good examples. The next question have got to do with specifically how can we help girls who have experienced harassment? And I would have it at two levels. The first one, which the question is about how can they report inappropriate content or messages that they will send to, but then it's deleted by other people. So there's a technical aspect to it. So for girls who have experienced harassment, what are the technical solutions to it? The second level I would like to bring to the panel is there would be for some girls, depending on how young the girl is, they could be actually experience trauma, like a shock, or it might impact them emotionally and mentally. So what can they do? Should they approach? How should they process some of these things? So if I could refer the question first to Clara, in terms of technology-wise, if they see something like that, if they have how do they report? Right? What should they do? And then perhaps for the other level about, how does it impact the girls themselves? How should they report, process some of this softer side? Is that okay? So Clara, would you like to go first?
So Caroline, I just take the first question, is that
yes,
right?
Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah.
So I can only speak for, our apps in this case. I think most people are aware that you can report content to us, and you can report every single type of content. And this includes, messages in our messaging platform, even comments on your posts. So I think that's the first thing. So I think that when you feel that someone's post is inappropriate, it makes you uncomfortable, you can report it. And in reporting, you can tell us in what way is that interaction inappropriate. And those are those signals that are actually important for us to determine the severity of the report, allows us to also prioritize review of those reports. I think when there are situations where the person deletes the content, unfortunately there's nothing on a technical basis that we can do. But I think knowing that is a risk, I think it's important that when you feel uncomfortable with an interaction, that screenshots are actually very important pieces of evidence to keep. And this is something that you could bring to an adult or someone that you trust to really discuss what has happened to you, and have a safe sort of conversation about what you can potentially do afterwards. But at least from the a technical standpoint, it's not something that we can sort of help you to recover. But just to know that risk exists, and its screenshots are still your best friend for posterity.
Thanks, Clara.
Sorry, just to jump in, I really echo what Clara said. For me, I mean, even just for me, I really just assume that most of our children and youth, they use these applications, right? So they definitely will know how to report and block. So we assume that, and we never really talk about it until I realized that they know how to use this, but it doesn't mean that they know all the features. So I think one thing is to help them to realize that, when something happens on this platform, you can always block, you can always report, but first take a screenshot. And something that we kind of learned is that we realized we actually have to tell them that when you block someone, the harasser or the bully could be your friend. They will not be notified, because sometimes they are fearful that, what if my friend know that I block? Then what if my friend get upset and come and disturb me a bit more? So we realized that, I want to assure you, nothing will happen to you in the past. If this bully were to comment on your old videos, this bully cannot access it anymore. So it's just a reminder that it's okay. On this platform, they make it so safe for you to blog, report. Yeah. So I really agree with Clara, and for us to remember to check in with them. Do you know how to block? Do you know how to report?
Yeah, thanks so much, Joanne. Recently, I realized that actually young children don't know how to take screenshot. You ask them to take screenshot, they actually don't know how to take screenshot. Then they ask them, you need to tell a trusted adult. And they will say how to take screenshot.
Correct. So we tell them that
For granted.
if you don't know how to take screenshot, never mind, take a phone, take a photo. Also can.
Yeah, thank you. Daniel, what are your thoughts in terms of, if they are exposed, being harassed, the emotional side, the mental well-being side? Oh, you're muted.
No,
Yes.
sorry, I was just gonna say that I think it's important to understand there are differences between boys and girls. So in fact, back in the 1980s, it reveals my age. I was reading this book called Computer Addiction, and in that book, it's written by this lady, a researcher, a social scientist who's her name is Shotton, I think. She was trying to see what kind of things in the computer. At that time, it was computer addiction. She saw that the male addicts were people who were very engrossed in the mechanical, the technical part of writing programs. They became addicted in programming and doing coding. So they were the nerds. The women who were addicted were middle-aged housewives because they enjoyed the social aspect of the internet and the computers. Where they can make friends. At that time, the social media was not the way it is today. But you can translate that to today. You have a young person. If it's a boy, it's likely that they are playing games and they socialize through those means. If it is a girl, it is likely to be more apps that allow them, games maybe, but not as much. And I'm stereotyping a little, but it's probably true. They would be getting more involved with sort of making friends and keeping in touch. And it's akin to, say, the telephone was in relationships many years ago. 30 years ago, if you want to make, keep close contact with your friend and you're not physically there, you'd call them on the phone, right? Even if it's a tethered line. But today, many of the apps and even the groups, whether someone mentioned Discord, these groups allow people to interact and socialize. And the key is really about the relationship forming. So I think when you form a physical relationship, a real relationship with individuals, we also have the ups and downs. And you can, sometimes the relationship goes sour and you're trying to avoid the person, you'll physically do that. Online is a little bit more difficult. So I think the skill set of dealing with relationships needs to be translated onto the online media, and ask yourself, how do you end these relationships? Should they go bad? How do you handle it? And I think our young people are not equipped, and we're not really giving them the competencies needed to deal with this online type of interactions. So I think it's important to think about how this translates in the digital world. And I suppose because we got Facebook and Meta here, I suppose the metaverse will certainly give us a new way of sort of interaction. I mean, some years ago, we had was it called Second Life? The concept of having these avatars interact in a digital or virtual world is not it's not unheard of and or hard to imagine. You're going to have a lot more issues, whether it's harassment or whether it's in other forms of inappropriate behavior towards one another. And you need to be able to handle it the same way you handle real world, say bullying, harassment, or other kinds of behaviors that today in the schools we have to manage.
Thank you so much. I'm very mindful of time. I know that many of you have to go back to your families. So at this point, I will be inviting all the panelists to give their final encouragement. There's a lot more questions in Slido. The webinar will end at 9 o'clock proper. So that's for those of you who need to go back to your children, your families, please do so. For those who want to stay on and hear more questions, I don't think we can answer all the questions. There are just too many. The panelists have kindly agreed to stay back for another half an hour. We'll hard stop at 9:30. Is that okay? So those who need to go later at 9, please go ahead. I'll be sharing with you some resources, so do hang on until 9 o'clock, okay? So if I could invite perhaps Jhee to go first for your final encouragement, especially, as a father, how would you encourage fellow fathers here in the room?
Okay, thanks, Carol. Well, I typically end off some of my talks with parents by saying that we all make mistakes. Just don't worry about it, move on from there. I mean, I give talks about screen time and things like that. And I actually end off by sharing also an example where I fumbled. So like, for example, I told my kids no mobile phone usage during dinner time, during meal times. And one day, I do try to keep to it. And one day, you know, I just found myself engrossed in it. And my kids were the one, you taught us not to do that, and now you're doing it. So I said, sorry, okay, but we'll journey this together. So I think one encouragement I want to leave behind with parents is that we all make mistakes. So don't worry, just journey together and move on.
Thanks, Jhee. Clara, would you like to go next?
Sure thing. Final words of encouragement. You know, I'm in the tech industry, and yet I am overwhelmed by the changes and the new developments and technology, including, you know, on our platforms. So I think, you know, it can be very intimidating, and to be rest assured that I think you're not alone in sort of feeling that way about technology. But I guess the encouragement is that to press on, I guess, approach using applications from a place of curiosity. In fact, one of the guides that we've sort of developed with some experts say that one of the entry points for this, you know, having conversations with your child about the apps that they use is to ask them, well, teach me, like Joanne says with her 4-year-old nephew, teach me about this game that you're playing, and why do you enjoy it so much, and what can you do inside? And that, you know, if your kid really loves using that app, it's really a great conversation starter to also learn more about the app and also what they're doing and who they're interacting with, you know, in their world. So yeah, just a quick word of encouragement from me. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you so much, Clara. And if I could invite Daniel for your final encouragement, both in your professional capacity and also perhaps as a grandfather, advise us and teach us parents, how can we do better?
No, I think sometimes we're trying too hard now. We're Singaporeans, right? So we must be perfect. So maybe dispense with some of that perfection. Having had 5 kids and now 1 grandchild with another coming, I recognize that we can make many mistakes, and our children are fairly resilient. They do get through some of this, and don't jump at the slightest issue. I would say, just remember, you have as a parent 2 things that you need to do. You have to be responsive to your child. That means love them, but you also have to be demanding of them. That means to monitor and keep track of their activities. Now, it is done in reverse. And a lot of parents tend to start off by being very responsive and then start to becoming demanding when they have youth and young adolescents. I ask you to do the reverse. If you start off as being a little demanding and be strict with a young child, and then become more and more responsive as your child grows older, they will appreciate it. And part of that responsiveness also means giving that responsibility to them. So, children, they do have their own personal rights, but they also have certain responsibilities to take care of themselves, to keep themselves safe, and to protect themselves. So as much as we want to, demand that they follow your rules, if you haven't done this when they were young, please don't try to incorporate too much when they're older. So it's important that this responsive, demanding piece is played out well. So, if you've got a teenager, my suggestion is don't spend so much time with them. Go and do your own business, spend more time with your spouse, for example, and let them grow up. They have to learn to navigate. Of course, make sure that the tools are available to them. If you have very young children, please love them, care for them, but be highly demanding and monitor their behavior closely so that they do not get in trouble where, especially in the use of technology. And as Facebook says, right, 13 years and below, you shouldn't be even using it. So I think that's it. That's my few words.
So you must remember all the 3 Ps and the 3 Rs, and then must reverse the order. Thank you so much. Great tips. Thank you so much. Joanne?
Okay. I prepared my final words. Okay, I'll try to concise it. Now, to the parents here who feel that, right now maybe you're not in the best, you may not have the best relationship with them, maybe a bit strained, you had some conflict. I want to encourage you really, like what Clara said, you're not alone. But in the meantime, you know that you still want to come in to support your children or your youth. And this is my advice. My suggestion really is that, sometimes we have we want to tell them something, we want to correct them. All our messages are correct, nothing wrong with them, but because it comes from us, maybe they are not as receptive. I think sometimes at certain point you may need to work through another messenger. It could be I know that tonight we have some caring adults, educators and youths under 35. You may be an older sibling to someone, you may be a mature cousin or auntie and uncle to someone. I ask that hopefully you can avail yourself to help the parents around you. If you happen to have a good relationship with the child, help to be that messenger sometimes. It really does make a difference. Okay, of course, this is temporary. Okay, while you work through the messenger, in the meantime, slowly build your relationship. Agree that when you're curious, that and when your child is in a position of, now they are in a position where they teach you something, it's very refreshing and different for them. So I think trying a few of this may help you to slowly rebuild that relationship. Yeah. So that's my suggestion. Yeah, you're not alone. You can find support. Yeah.
So good. Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you very much. And tonight, everybody, we have a special guest with us. And our special guest is Ms. Rahayu Mahzam, who is the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Communications and Information, as well as Ministry of Health. So, Paulset, can I hand over the time to you?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Carol. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I came a little late, but I caught many of the good points that our panelists shared today. I firstly just want to say thank you very much to all the panelists for your time and all the useful nuggets of information and tips that you've shared earlier. I was listening in as a parent as well, and I thought that they were very useful tips. I just wanted to say that I'm very excited because today is actually Safer Internet Day, and in conjunction of this that we are celebrating, we've also Sunlight AfA is also organizing for the first time ever a webinar, and I think it is just so apt that we're discussing this topic on this day. I heard earlier some of the questions. I saw the questions being asked on Slido and the comments made by the panelists, and I think there's really great interest on these issues surrounding the content that our children are being exposed to online, the technology facilitated harassment that they may face, and all these things are so real for our children. As parents, you really want to do your best and you want to protect them from so many things. There's already enough to deal with in the physical world, and you now have to also worry about what's happening to them on the online space. And these are things that we have to actually think about and face. The children are mostly digital natives. They've grown up with this, and especially with COVID-19 and the push to using technology, especially in schools, you see a lot of these issues becoming very real. Some of these things have real life negative impact on our youth, and it transcends many different dimensions, mental, physical, social issues. And these are things that we wanted to speak about today. So today we targeted parents wanting to bring you to this platform to have this discussion. I'm so heartened actually by the encouragement and support that the panelists have given earlier, because I think that really is what we need right now. We have a lot of concerns. Concerns surrounding the issues on the online space is not going to go away. And I think the solution is not running away from the digital space or not using them, because that's here to stay. And there are a lot of benefits, like I think Prof. Daniel earlier mentioned, of the internet, and that has helped us a lot in connecting us, in breaking boundaries globally and allowing for greater opportunities. And so I think we need to learn to empower our children, to strengthen our skills and make ourselves resilient to this. The reality is that these issues that we're talking about, the concerns that we have, we're not alone in this, not just as a country, but globally. So recently, I attended the International Grand Committee on disinformation, and the topic really was on online harms, and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of international views on things such as platform regulation, design, safety by design. How do we do that? How do we empower parents? How do we develop more campaigns and create better public education that people are more edified and are then better equipped to deal with the developments in the digital space? So these are things I think that we also have to look at here in Singapore. These are platforms and opportunities that we have coming together here at the webinar, and also with things that we are hoping to do in the future, actually bring together a community where people are supported, parents are supported. You know, you are like Clara and Joanne mentioned, you're not alone in this, you know. You are actually together in an ecosystem where we all want to do our best for our children. And sharing some of these practical ideas, I think having these deep conversations allow for us to create not just a space where we are just protecting them, but also teaching them how to regulate behavior, like what Prof. Daniel alluded to earlier. And I think candid sharing, like what Prof. Jhee earlier mentioned about his own sort of failings as a parent, you know, in those moments, and we all learn together. Hopefully will help us strengthen this ability to build a better community. So I'm so grateful for actually all your questions, because I think if you're looking at the questions, you can see some very real concerns that parents have. And I think the approach we have to take is a multi-pronged one. I think we all have to play a part in actually appreciating and understanding children better, learning from experts, like Carol and Joanne, you know, knowing how to deal with our teenagers and our young children, and embracing that new technology that they're facing. We can then also leverage on different partnerships and collaborations with platforms. And I know that the platforms have been doing quite a bit, Clara has mentioned, but we also may need to look at what are some of the basic safety regulations that we can put in place. We may need to update some of our laws, because there's really an international convergence on how we can regulate internet better with some statutes or some laws in place. And so these are all the things that I think as a package we need to look at and come together. And hopefully we can co-create a better internet together with insights from parents, with the tech companies, everybody doing our part to make sure that the internet is as safe a place as it can be, and we have all the protection in place. You know, we liken it to how it is like in Singapore. Now we can walk our streets, generally being comfortable and not having to worry about a crime happening. I think we want that kind of safety and comfort and assurance for our children online. But this takes effort. I think are still in the nascent stages, but I think we all can play that role to strengthen the digital safety for all of our children. So I hope this is a start, and I thank you for your time, for your interest in this, and I hope we can continue journeying with Sunlight AfA, and we'll take your feedback and hopefully co-create more programs, initiatives, and bring in more ideas so that we can see that vision and achieve that vision that we want for our children. Thank you very much, everyone. And I really wish to see all of you again in another occasion. Thank you. Have a great evening.